Today we're talking about the real way to contact aliens. So what the hell is this about? We're talking about what are aliens, and we're talking about an event that happened in 1981 by a research team called LL Research that made contact with an interdimensional entity that calls itself Ra, a messenger of the Law of One. Now, there is so much to talk about here. This is something that I've been wanting to cover with you guys for a very long time. This material, the Law of One, also called the Ra material, is fascinating, and it's all about extraterrestrial, alien, or interdimensional contact. So what this is, let me just give a brief summary here, and then we're going to dive into the material itself. Now, I made a whole introduction to the Law of One. Check it out on my channel if you haven't seen it. It's not a live stream video. It's a regular video. Check it out. It gives a good introduction, but I'll try and give a quick summary as much as possible. Then we're going to dive into the material itself, and I want to make sure that we have enough time to take a look at this. Now, so what is the Law of One material? Like I said, in 1981, a group of researchers made contact with an entity that claims to be Ra, and Ra claims to be a being that contacted the Egyptians to transmit a message to help change the world, to help humanity's evolution. Now, contact with this being wasn't made through like radios, radio waves, or lasers, or anything like that. It was employed by using techniques like rituals and channeling and trance techniques. It was through the power of the mind, because this entity that was contacted wasn't an alien like how it's depicted in Hollywood movies, like a little green person, but rather a being of pure thought, a being of pure mind that is transmitting information from a different dimension. Now, this was extremely intense. They did 108 channeling sessions over a period of 3 years, and it actually ended up in a tragic death as well, because according to Ra, these transmissions were being interrupted by negative entities that were also influencing the physical health of the LL research team. So they ended up stopping the research because it was taking too much of a physical toll on Carla, the channeler. But the questioner, Don, part of the LL research team, his health quickly deteriorated over 7 months. And go watch the video that I did. It ended with a standoff with the police and a tragic death. Yeah, crazy stuff. Like I said, go check out the video for full info there. But we are going to be diving into the material today, taking a look at this and exploring it in detail. So it's going to be good. Like I said, I'm really excited about this. This is information that can really start your mind thinking in different ways. And it's a great example of concept networking. So in our system, the Neogenian system, our goal is to help humanity reach a higher consciousness and what we call hyper-awareness. And there are 3 tools that are really pivotal in reaching this higher state of consciousness. That's metacognition, concept networking, and phenomenological experience. Understanding the law material is a good exercise in concept networking, because you have to understand how secret societies and the occult and physics and quantum mechanics and philosophy and ideas like interdimensional beings and the evolution of the world all connect and knit together to form a cohesive whole picture of reality. So anyway, I digress. Let's get started on this. Now, real quick before we do, I want to say if you enjoy my work, please like and subscribe. Helps out a lot. And if you enjoy what I do, consider supporting on Patreon. It allows me to create bigger and better videos, and you get access to all of our members-only videos, and there's a new members-only video every week. So you can join by going to patreon.com/MorgueOfficial, or you can hit the join button right below this video, and if you choose tier 2 or higher, you get all that as well. Also, be on the lookout in the comments for scams. There's a lot of people claiming to be me, saying, join my WhatsApp, join my Telegram. That's a scam. Don't fall for it. Also, there are people in groups out there who don't want our information to get out there. They don't want this information getting out. So there are people in groups spreading disinformation and misinformation about myself and those involved with our system and trying to disrupt what we're doing. So, use your reason, use your mind, be smart. Don't fall for the BS. All right. Let's begin. This is going to be great. This is going to be good stuff. So today, like I said, we're diving into the raw material itself, and we're going to be looking at an introduction to just what the hell is going on here. What is this? What's happening? That's what we're talking about today. Now, just so you guys know, you can read all of the Law of One material for free by going to lawofone.info.
You can read it all for free. It's great. It's fantastic. Not only that, but every single entry in the channeling sessions it was all recorded. So you can listen to all the recordings as well. Really cool stuff. Really good stuff. So let's start. And this is the introduction. So LL Research was a research team composed of 3 people: Don Elkins, Carla Ruckert, and Jim McCarty. Jim McCarty, as far as I understand it, was the one who kind of organized all this and put it together, I think. And he's a professor of physics and engineering, and he's the one who was giving the questions. Carla Ruckert is what they would call the instrument, was the channeler who would actually channel this entity. And then Jim McCarty was the one who would kind of oversee and make sure everything was going okay, and would write everything down, transcribe everything, which would ultimately be compiled into these books. Oh, also one quick thing that I want to say: I've read all of the Law of One material, but it was years ago. So if some of this stuff, I don't remember all of it or whatever. It was years ago that I read this, so a lot of this is going to be a refresher for me as well. But let's jump into this, and I will give my insights from having read the material from what I recall, and putting it in context of the Neo-Genian system. Oh, one final thing. Sorry, I know we got to start. One final thing. As to the legitimacy of this, I want to say this is important. This could be real. It could be a hoax, or it could all be a manifestation of the unconscious mind or tapping into the collective unconscious. So I want to say, just because I'm reading this and examining it doesn't mean I automatically believe 100% that this is true. There's a lot of stuff in here that I disagree with, and I'll be telling you what I do disagree with. A lot of stuff that seems like contradictory or weird or just doesn't make sense. So it very possibly could be a hoax, but it could be real. And if it was real, all those contradictions and errors or whatnot could be accounted for by negative entities interfering, because Ross specifically says negative entities try and distort the information to try and make it lose its credibility. And third, it could be a manifestation of Carla's collective unconscious, or the collective unconscious and Carla's unconscious. Carla was a highly intelligent individual with a background in religious studies and philosophy, etc. So it could have been manifestation of her unconscious. Anyway, we're going to explore this kind of as though it were true, but I just want to put a reminder out there. Just because we're taking a look at this doesn't mean I automatically believe that it's true or not. Regardless, it's kind of like the question did Jesus exist or not? Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's like, let's look at what Jesus said and examine it and see what we can learn from it. Same thing here. Is this actually real? Yeah, well, it doesn't really matter. Let's see what's said and examine it and see how we can understand, if it can help us understand ourselves and our world or whatever a little better. So this is from the introduction to book 1. And so this is Don Elkins speaking, and Don Elkins was the professor in physics and engineering, who unfortunately lost his life. Like I said, there was a standoff with the police. Pretty crazy. You want to check out the video I did for more information on that. Anyway, Don Elkins says this book is an exact transcript from tape recordings of 26 sessions of an experiment designed to communicate with an extraterrestrial being. Now, as we're going to see, there's different ways to look at aliens. Like I said before, you can look at aliens as little green men on other planets, and surely, alien exists on other planets. But with the raw material, what we're really talking about here is a being where a species has evolved past the need for a physical body, and so they are now in an entirely different dimension and are communicating through thought. We'll touch more on that later, but I want to read through this here. So, since our experimental work began, and even before we officially formed a research group, there was considerable confusion about the nature of our research. I would like to state that I consider my point of view to be purely scientific. So Don Elkins really seems to be coming at this from a very legit position. He wants to examine it logically, he wants to examine it rationally, he wants to do it as rigorously as possible.
It is not the purpose of our research group to attempt to do anything other than make experimental data available. Each reader will undoubtedly reach his own conclusion about the meaning of this body of data. And that's true. For the most part, the raw material is just a collection of a transcript of the transmissions. It's not really trying to convince you of anything. It's not really putting in the viewpoints of the research team. It's just presenting the data that they acquired. After almost 30 years of research and experimentation in the area of so-called paranormal phenomena, I must recommend and this is interesting, I must recommend extreme caution in reaching a conclusion. If it is possible to make money, gain notoriety, or have fun from perpetuating a hoax, then someone usually does. Consequently, paranormal or psychic areas are prime targets for the trickster, and the careful researcher usually has to observe copious amounts of garbage data in order to find a possible embedded gem of truth. So very interesting. Right away, Don is saying you need to be skeptical. There are people who will create hoaxes. Now, just because one is saying that doesn't mean one couldn't still be lying or making something up, but interesting to note this. So in my opinion, if this were a hoax, I would think it would probably have been not collectively agreed upon, but probably stemming from Carla. Carla would be the one that, in other words, the other two would probably have legitimately believed that it was channeling, where Carla would have been faking it. However, remember, I'm not saying that it is a hoax. I would be more inclined to think that it was Carla tapping into her collective unconscious or her own unconscious than it being a hoax. But you never know. So I'm just, as I go forward, we're going to explore all three positions. And I just want you to know, I don't have one that I push more than I'm not trying to push a certain narrative or not. I'm just trying to present the information. So, if I say, oh, well, this could have happened or that could have happened, don't get offended or like, oh, I'm just presenting this in all possibilities. Now, and on that note, looking at Don's very interesting. Don seems to be approaching this from a scientific perspective. However, if you read a little further, and we're not going to really get into this, but Don did experiments with Uri Geller and said, as far as I know, that, oh yeah, Uri Geller is like, our experiments were successful. Well, Uri Geller's basically a magician. Uri Geller does tricks. In I think the 70s, Uri Geller was really popular and people thought that he was actually psychic, actually bending metal, etc. Look, no one can say 100% certainty, but he uses techniques that magicians use in, stage shows and things like that. So Don seems to be, despite coming from a scientific background, one that can be duped. In my opinion. Remember, this is just my opinion here. It is my opinion that Uri Geller is not actually doing what he purports to do. Anyway, let's just continue. And I don't want to downplay this because there's great information here. Like, I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this stuff. So, but I want to be, the reason why I'm talking about this so much is because, look, this is what one has to do when one goes into this material. You have to have your wits about you. When one is reading stuff like channeled information or cult information or books and information like this is why I don't automatically recommend people go read all these books. Because there's a lot of tricksters, there's a lot of hoaxes, there's a lot of manipulators. So you just constantly have to be using metacognition, thinking about your own thought process, not just reading the material, but thinking about the material that you're reading, examining it. And because a lot of people will just have the idea of like, oh, Ra, an interdimensional entity said this, I must believe that it's true then. No, it needs to be examined critically just like everything else. So anyway, but still, really, this is going to be some interesting stuff. So let's continue here.
Our research group uses what I prefer to call tuned trance telepathy to communicate with an extraterrestrial race called Ra. We use the English language because it is known by Ra. In fact, Ra knows more of it than I do. Ra landed on Earth about 11,000 years ago as a sort of extraterrestrial missionary with the objective of helping Earthman with his mental evolution. Failing in this attempt, Ra retreated from the Earth's surface, but continued to monitor activities closely on this planet. For this reason, Ra is highly informed about our history, languages, etc. Probably the most difficult thing to understand about Ra is its nature. Ra is a sixth density social memory complex. Since Earth is near the end of the third density cycle of evolution, this means that Ra is three evolutionary cycles ahead of us. In other words, Ra's present state of evolution is millions of years in advance of Earthman's. It is not surprising that Ra had difficulty communicating with Earthman 11,000 years ago. The same problem still exists in our present enlightened time. Okay, let's unpack this. There's a lot of interesting things to unpack here. Okay, so first of all, in my opinion, remember, Don is the questioner. Don is just getting this information from what's coming through Carla, channeling Ra. In my opinion, Don has greatly misinterpreted what Ra is. So Ra claims to be a sixth density social memory complex. Ra presents reality being in terms of 7 levels of consciousness. Alternatively, you could call them 8 levels of consciousness because they form an octave. We'll talk about that more in the future. But whether you want to call it 7 or 8 levels of consciousness, or levels of evolution, Ra claims to be on the 6th, while humanity is on the 3rd. So you could imagine like animals being on the 2nd, right? So you have animals on the 2nd, humans on the 3rd. Ra claims to be on the 6th. So and by the way, what is the 4th? In my opinion, the 4th is exactly what we are trying to kickstart humanity to get to right now, where some of us exist in that plane right now. We exist on that level and that evolutionary step right now. This is the stage of hyper-awareness, or at least higher consciousness than self-awareness, where we begin to understand what we are, where we are, why we are here, and raise our consciousness to different modes. In our system, we have the triadic modes of consciousness, which is avatar, zedic, and absolute, but accessing these different structures or forming these different structures of the psyche. But I digress. Ra claims to be at the 6th level of evolution. So what is the 6th level of evolution? Well, Ra claims that it is a social memory complex. What is a social memory complex? Okay, so again, in interpreting it from what we know about reality in our system, the Neogenian system, this would be a group of minds that have evolved past the need for a physical body and are now operating in a new dimension as a collective network mind. So each and every one of us are eternal minds. Each and every one of us are eternal souls. We call them zetas. We call them zetas as they are one infinite fullness that voids to zero. They're a triune concept that involves 0, 1, and infinity. This is a being of frequency. This is what a soul is. And this is why we call them zetas, an infinite fullness that voids to zero. Now, so each one of us are eternal soul, eternal mind, a zeta. We're going through evolution, process of evolution. We exist on a planet. Eventually, we unify the planet, create a planetary civilization. We learn together, synchronize together, grow. We evolve past the need for physical bodies, and we're so synchronized, we operate as a single unified mind, but as a network, not like one undifferentiated mass, but rather nodes in a network mind, kind of like how you would think of a choir, where each individual member retains their individuality and their unique voice and their unique character, but together they form one symphony, one harmony. So, in my opinion, if we're interpreting the law of one as being real, if we are doing that, Ra is what I would call a network mind or sub-network mind. This is what Ra calls a social memory complex, a coalescence or a network of minds operating as one. Now, see, And if this is the case, I believe that Don is interpreting this incorrectly, because what Don says is that they are a race called Ra that landed on Earth 11,000 years ago and then left. So now I don't know what Don exactly thinks, but what it seems like Don is thinking is that Ra is like a group of beings with bodies like on a planet somewhere that one time landed on Earth, then left Earth, and that now they still have bodies, but they're like a collective still, and they're communicating with Earth, I guess, from some physical location or something. I'm not really sure, but it seems odd the way that Don is describing it. So the way I would interpret it, once again, if we're interpreting this as though it were real, possibly could be, it's not that they're a group of physical beings that got in a spaceship, landed on Earth, then took off, and are now communicating from some planet or some physical location. Like I said, they are a group that evolved past the need for physical bodies, exist now in their own dimension as a network mind, and are communicating through thought from that frequency domain, from that dimension. And when it says that they visited Earth, in my opinion, this wouldn't mean landing in a spaceship. It would mean localizing in avatars, meaning incarnating, reincarnating. That means it could send some of its minds, or have some of its minds from that network mind, be born on Earth through the process of reincarnation. Because this is how you would be able to, as an incorporeal being, as a being that's not in this dimension anywhere, well, you need an avatar to access this dimension. So visiting Earth, in my opinion, wouldn't be like landing in spaceships. It would be incarnating. And I prefer the term localizing and relocalizing rather than incarnating and reincarnating, but I use these terms because people are more familiar with them. Now, because I believe that it's very possible that some of us here could possibly be localizing or reincarnating from a higher structure. Now, can we say this for sure? No, we can't. Why not? Well, because when you're born, the filtering mechanism of the brain essentially filters out all memory of what you are, where you are, and why you are here. That's what happens. So if Ra were to have localized on Earth, then this would mean, like a forgetting would happen, just like it could happen today. So this is my interpretation. I would think that fits in with how we understand reality to be. So continuing here, it's interesting that it says that it's not surprising that Ra had difficulty communicating with Earthman 11,000 years ago, and the same problem still exists in our present enlightened time. So basically, it's also Don's also saying, think about the difficulty one would have of being a sixth density social memory complex, or a highly evolved subnetwork mind, whatever you want to call it, and communicating to a species that is a lot lower in their current consciousness. Like, think about how difficult that would be. I mean, think how difficult it is for us to communicate to people who don't really have an understanding of what existence is. That's it's hard. It's hard to get people to open their minds, to understand certain concepts. So imagine, Ra attempting to do this. And this can also account for, possibly, if it's real, if it were to be real, it would be able to account for some of the mistakes or errors or strangeness. Because think about how difficult it would be to, from that level of consciousness, trying to translate ideas down. You're going to have some mistranslations. It's like talking in another language or something. You're going to have some hiccups here and there. It's going to be a little weird. But anyway, let's see where we're at here. Let's continue. So this is some excerpts from Don. Now let's go down a lot, because then we're skipping quite a lot, as you can see. But I want to be able to do the introduction today. So this is Carla, right? So Carla is now speaking. We heard from Don Elkins, the professor of physics and engineering. Now from Carla, who is the channeler or instrument. Carla says, in the raw material, a good deal of information is discussed concerning our relationship with the universe. But, you know what? Actually,
Oh, do we have time to talk about this? This is some fascinating. I highlighted this as if we have enough time, we'll talk about it. You know what? I don't know if we have enough time. I'm going to skip this part, go down to the next part. When we get done talking, if we have more time, we'll come back to it. Because this starts talking about never mind. The problem with the raw material is there's just so much to talk about. It's hard to know where to begin. That's where concept networking comes into play as well. It's kind of like approaching a sphere. Where do you start on a sphere? Well, everywhere is kind of the beginning, but nowhere is the beginning at the same time. So it's kind of like you have to have an overview of everything, and then things start falling into place and clicking. So we're scrolling and scrolling. There's a lot of info here, lots and lots of info. But I don't want to dwell too much on the introduction. That's why we're going through a lot of it. Okay. So this is Carla speaking. When in order for the contact to occur, trance has to be obtained. So Carla has to go into a trance. The disquiet grows into something close to a near panic on my part. So this is interesting. So Carla has to go into a trance, and she gets into such a state, such an anxiety in producing state, it's close to near panic. I do not know how the procedure for a trance works, and I am always afraid that in this session nothing will happen. You know that again, if it's real, that's a lot of responsibility to take on, to be like, okay, everyone, if you don't really know how it works and it's just happening to you, and you kind of just like, that's a lot of pressure. So I don't know the procedure for trance works, and how it works, and I'm always afraid that nothing will happen. I will remain conscious, and I will receive no contact. Again, this has never happened. So it's never happened that she remained conscious and she didn't receive any contact. She always receives contact, apparently. Since neither I nor either of the others in our group have any real idea of how to aid me beyond a certain point in achieving a state of trance, there is nothing to be done but to simply move ahead. Don states that although my state of trance is similar to others he has observed, it is what he would call telepathic reception in the trance state. Although I studied literature in my undergraduate days and was a librarian for many years, Carla's incredibly smart, by the way, reading from what I understand. I don't know her in detail, but from the little I do know about her, she seems highly intelligent. Although I studied literature in my undergraduate days and was a librarian for many years, reading the material almost always offers me the opportunity to learn a new word or two, and has certainly stretched my mind in the areas of science which in my education was woefully lacking. So she's basically saying, when she reads the material that was channeled through her, she learns new words. It really stretches her mind trying to understand some of these concepts. Interesting. What concerns me perhaps more than anything else is that someone who reads this material will consider this human being that I am to have some sort of wisdom that Ra certainly has, but that I do not. If this work impresses you, I can only ask that you please make a sharp differentiation in your mind between the words and the medium through which the words come. You would not, for instance, expect the water pipe to be responsible for the quality of the water which runs through it. So she's basically saying, hey, I'm the pipe, not the water. I'm the channeler of the information. I'm not the originator of the information. So if you like this information, don't assign it to me. This is coming from Ra. This is what Carla is saying. It's very nice, very, very humble and nice of Carla. Oh, by the way, I want to state something real quick. And that is, once again, this could be real. This could be a hoax. It could be coming from the unconscious. If it were, let's say, made up, I don't believe there was any nefarious intention. If it were, I believe it would be like them thinking, or Carla thinking, okay, humanity needs to wake up and move forward and become united. Maybe this is a way to get people to listen. I'm really not inclined to think that's the case, though. To me, I would lean, It's such, there's good arguments for all different scenarios, and I think I've said that enough. So let's just continue. I think that it's very interesting to explore the idea that it's a manifestation of the unconscious, or tapping into the collective unconscious, or that it could be real. By the way, when I say it could or couldn't be real, I believe that network minds exist. I believe that aliens exist. I believe these things actually exist. I believe there's very good reasons to believe these things actually exist. The question is whether this is a legitimate contact, or if it's contact just actually with the collective unconscious or the unconscious mind, or maybe even some other kind of entity that's trying to, who knows? But always this stuff, you need to like examine it critically when going in. So we heard from Carla, we heard from Don. Now let's hear from Jim McCarty. So Jim says, we are beginners when it comes to knowing how the raw contact occurs. And I think it's very interesting how humble these individuals seem to be. They're beginners when it comes to knowing how the raw contact occurs. And it has only been through a process of trial and error, session by session, that we have learned more about how to support our instrument, Carla, in the mental, physical, and spiritual senses. We were so excited about the raw contact when it first began that we had 2 sessions a day for days at a time, but we've since learned that this procedure was much too wearing on Carla. Now we average about 1 session every week. A great deal of thought goes into the questions which Don asks during each session. Each of us contributes ideas, but the great bulk of the line of questioning is accomplished by Don, which I think is very cool, by the way, because if you look at the questions, I'm so glad they got someone like Don to ask the questions, who has a background in physics and engineering, because he asks some really hard-hitting questions to Ra. And they cover such a broad range of topics, from physics to, physics and cosmology, and even like tarot cards and occultism. And this is why it's a good exercise in concept networking, to see how this stuff works and fits together, and which is one reason why I'm excited to discuss this all with you. With the decision made to hold a session the night before the session is to occur. Okay, so this is cool. So now this is why it's important. I really wanted to read this part to you, because we're diving into how, like, what they do in a session. Because what we're going to do, we're going to read the actual transcripts of the contact with Ra, and they're good. There's 108 of them. Good stuff. But this is good to know the process of what happened. So when they decide to hold a session, the night before the session is to occur, so the night before they decide to have one, they arise the morning of the session, have a light breakfast, and begin the series of steps which will best aid in successfully completing the session. We meditate so that the harmony we try to produce in our daily lives is intensified, and so that our desires are unified into the single desire to see contact with Ra. So first, what they do is they meditate. And the reason why they meditate is because, your mind, this is all taking place through contact of the mind, contact with the mind. Your mind is a noisy place. You're thinking about what you want to have for dinner. You're thinking about anxieties that you're having. You're thinking about things you need to do at work, relationship stuff. Your mind is all over the place, trying to examine all these different things. So you want to, if you're doing, trying to make contact with the mind, what they're doing is they're putting a stillness in that cacophony of frequencies that could cause interference or disruption or anxiety or whatever. Everyone is just, meaning they're all getting into a focused state with a single unified intention. We then perform our ritual of protection and cleansing of the room in which the contact will be made. So then they perform a ritual of protection. Now, this ritual of protection that they perform is known as the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, or the LBRP for short, and originated in the Order of the Golden Dawn, which was a secret society, I believe was established in 1888. Now, this secret society had a lot of prominent members, and they created a ritual called the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. So now, what do rituals have to do with anything? Why are they doing this sort of thing? Well, again, specifically the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram is about clearing the mind. That's why it's called the banishing ritual. You're banishing all negative entities or just like negative thoughts, depending on how you view existence. You're clearing your mind. It's the meditation was one part. Now the banishing ritual is about getting rid of negative thoughts. And this helps align oneself. If you're doing a ritual, you're engaging in rhythmic recitation. You're getting in like a trance. It's very. If anyone has ever done a ritual, it's very trance-like. As you go, you invoke the different names of a deity, like Agala, Ehe, Yod, He, Vav, He, and you do a lot of things like this, where you start getting into a rhythm, and it just starts putting your mind in this cycle, and you're doing these different gestures and rituals that are meant to clear your mind, get rid of any negative influences. Then you call on the different archangels, Raphael, Uriel, Gabriel, Michael, etc. And as you call upon each of these archangels represent different aspects of the mind. Some of them, represent power and will. Another represents more like intuition and reason, and more others to do with more like nurture and care and empathy, etc. And so, invoking these archangels are symbolic for balancing your mind, balancing intuition with reason, with empathy and will, and all this. So I just want to put out there, because a lot of people are, I think, gonna, when you come into this for the first time, you're like, what does this have to do with anything? You're meditating, you're doing weird rituals from occult secret societies, you're contacting aliens. Like, what the fuck is going on? What do rituals have to do with it? Now, it's not like any kind of like magic where this is going to pull down this being from the ether or something because we said the right magic words. No, it's a form of psychology, and it's a form of getting into the right mindset by balancing the mind, clearing anxieties. It's an advanced form of psychology here. So anyone familiar with like Jungian psychology and like active imagination and dream analysis will see big similarities here when you're working with archetypes, dynamics of the mind, systems of the mind. So anyway, they do the meditation, they do the LBRP ritual, and then they situate Carla in a prone position on the bed, covering her body with a white blanket, her eyes with a white cloth, and hook up 3 tape recorder microphones just below her chin so that we don't miss any of the sessions if 1 or 2 tape recorders malfunction. So you can see they're really involved, really in depth. You can see I used that picture for the thumbnail. We'll be looking at more pictures, by the way, at the end of this particular video. I'll show you more pictures because there's some cool pictures here that I'll share with you guys of the sessions. And Ra talking about, it's cool. Ra instructs them how to take the pictures. It's cool. We'll get to that. We'll end with that. But so they lay Carla back, put 3 microphones on her chest just in case one malfunctions. They still have 2 recording, which you can see they're really pretty rigorous about this. As much as you can be with this sort of thing. By this time, all that is visible of Carla is her hair flowing down both of her shoulders and her nose poking out of the sea of cloth of white surrounding it. So they have blankets up to here, cloth over her eyes, and microphones on her chest. Imagine too, like Carla and the pressure of that, and I don't know, it's just kind of a lot. Everyone's doing this just for you. You've got everyone's waiting, ready to transcribe. You got the microphones. No wonder she had a lot of anxiety. That would be a very anxiety-producing situation. So you can also understand why things like meditation and these rituals were necessary to try and put one at ease, to relax the mind. So as she mentally recites the prayer of St. Francis, Dawn is aligning the table, which holds the Bible, candle, incense, and chalice of water in a straight line with her head, as recommended by Ra. After Dawn lights the candle and incense, he and I walk the circle of 1 around Carla and repeat the words which begin each contact. Okay, let's explain this again, because again, I feel like there's people out there who's going to be like, people out there who are going to be like, Okay, what the fuck? You have rituals, you got meditation. Now you're doing prayer and the Bible? Like, what kind of crazy BS is this? So think about this. When you are saying, putting the Bible above Carla's head and lighting incense and stuff like this, it's not as though you believe, it's not as though they believe that the Bible is some like magical object that is going to call down this being or something like this. Remember, this is all psychological. So Carla, I forget where it's said, but it's hinted at or said directly that this is something that brings her comfort. So if you look at the message of Christ, like especially in the Gospel of Thomas, which was banned, check out. I did a video on the banned Gospel of Thomas. Check it out. It's a very cool. It's the Secret Teachings of Jesus. Excuse me, Secret Teachings of Jesus. Check it out. And in it, Christ talks about how basically we're all divine, we're all beings of light, etc., etc. So for someone like Carla, who takes comfort in, let's say, the teachings of Christ and the Bible. By the way, I'm an ex-Christian, by the way, and have religious trauma syndrome, so I'm no fan of Christianity by any means, but there is a very positive way to interpret Christ's message, which was banned by the church. It's considered by the church heretical and blasphemous, etc. But there's a very positive way you can interpret Christ's message in that we are all one, and that's that aspect of it's great. I just want to be clear that I'm not like trying to promote Christianity or anything like that, because I'm not. But Carla likely has a very strong connection and comfort to those types of teachings of Christ. So for her, the Bible is something that gives her comfort. So if you surround someone with things that are, because remember, look, Carla is opening herself up to trance. She's nervous. She has anxiety. She's probably also pretty damn scared. Imagine like, oh, you're going to have an entity enter your mind and speak through you. That's scary AF. And if you have something that brings you comfort, surrounding yourself with comfortable things like a book that you really like, incense that you like, things that bring you comfort, that's going to put you in a calm state of mind. That's going to help clear the channel, so to speak, so you don't have anxiety and fear and nervousness all clouding the transmission. So when you see things like this, it's important to understand. It's kind of like if you have a child that's crying, what do? You give the child its favorite toy or something, and they find comfort in it and they can relax. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like a comfort blanket or a favorite toy or something like this. It allows them to relax. So I just want to be clear. I think a lot of people, and this is why I say understanding this information, it's a real good test of someone's ability for concept networking, because so many people will come in and just be like, oh, what? Magic ritual? Pfft, weird. Or, oh, what? Prayer in the Bible? Pfft, weird. Because I know I probably at some point in my life, I would have thought that as well. But when you understand the deeper meanings behind these things, like, oh, okay, I understand it's psychological. It's about balancing the mind, the different archetypes, the different elements of the psyche. And, oh, this is a comforting thing to relax the mind and to alleviate anxiety and fear, etc., then it starts to make sense why all this stuff is being used. So at some point after that, Carla departs her physical body, and Ra then uses it to make the words with which form the responses to Don's questions. So Ra starts speaking through Carla. I, Jim, meditate and send light to Carla for the duration of the session, only taking time out to flip the tapes over as they finish each side. When the session is over, Don waits a few moments for Carla to return to her usually stiff body, calls her name a few times until she responds, helps her to sit up, rubs her neck, and gives her the chalice of water to drink after he and I have filled it as full of our love as we can. Since Carla has no idea of what has occurred during the session, she apparently has no memory of this, she's always very curious to know how it went. She has to settle for secondhand bits and pieces of information until I can get the session transcribed from the tapes. So later on, from what I understand here, Jim then listens to the tapes and transcribes everything, which is usually very easy since Ross speaks quite slowly and forms each syllable with precise enunciation. And we will listen to some of these recordings if possible. I'm not 100% sure, if possible, during these streams.
So participating in this communication with Ra has been most inspiring for each of us because of the blend of eloquence and simplicity which characterizes Ra's response. The information contained in the raw material has been most helpful to us in increasing our knowledge of the mystery of the creation and our evolution through it. We hope that it might also be useful to you. And now, let's take a look at some of these photographs, but it's really interesting. If you take a look here, Ra actually instructs them on how to take the photographs. They probably asked Ra, like, is it okay if we take photographs? And now, why are they asking Ra? And you'll see Ra is kind of meticulous about how they take the photographs. Now, why is this the case? Well, as we'll find out later, Ra tried to communicate this information to the Egyptians, but Ra said that the message was quickly distorted by the priests and the people, and then like myths and legend and whatever took over. So, and this is why Ra is making contact again, according to Ra, is to try and transmit the message again in an undistorted way. So Ra is really paranoid about the message being misinterpreted. So, and this is why they transcribe it without, adding anything or interpreting anything, because they just want, Ra is very paranoid. This entity is apparently very paranoid about his message being misinterpreted, or their message being misinterpreted. So this is what Ra says about photographs being taken. Firstly, if pictures be taken of a session, the visual image must needs be that which is. That is, it is well for you to photograph only an actual working and no sham nor substitution of any material. Meaning, if you're going to take pictures, take a picture of an actual session, not a recreation. Has to be the real deal, Ra is basically saying. There shall be no distortions with this group, with which this group can avoid any more than we wish distortions in our words. So, yeah, paranoid Ra. Secondly, it is inadvisable to photograph the instrument, Carla, or any portion of the working room while the instrument is in a trance. So don't do it while Carla is in a trance. This is a narrow band contact, and we wish to keep electrical and electromagnetic energies constant when their presence is necessary and not present at all otherwise. Thirdly, once the instrument, Carla, is aware of the picture taking, whether before or after the working, the instrument shall be required to continuously respond to speech, thus assuring that no trance is imminent. Meaning, be very careful that she's not still in trance or about to enter trance. We ask that any photographs tell the truth and that they be dated and shine with a clarity so that there is no shadow of any but genuine expression which may be offered to those who seek truth. We come as humble messengers of the law of one, desiring to decrease distortions. We ask that you, who have been our friends, work with any considerations such as above discussed, not with the thought of quickly removing an unimportant detail, but as in all ways regard such as another opportunity to, as the adept must, be yourselves and offer that which is in and with you without pretense of any kind. So you can see, Ra's pretty paranoid here. Ra's like, okay, I've taken actual, it has to be an actual working, don't recreate it, make sure it's dated, don't, leave any detail out because you think it's unimportant. You're our friends, remember. You're our friends now. Don't screw anything up. Don't screw us over. So anyway, so we have right here, this is a picture. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger for you guys to see. So this is a picture of the setup with the Bible and the chalice and the incense and the candle. And this is a message from Ra saying, place at the entity's head a virgin chalice of water, place to the center the book, closely aligned with the instrument's mental distortions. Oh yeah, okay, so here, this is important here. Place to the center of the book, most closely aligned with the instrument's mental distortions, which are allied most closely with the law of one, that being the Bible, that she touches most frequently. So what the hell is Ra saying here? It's actually very interesting when you read what, really pay attention to what Ra is saying. Ra is saying, in the center, place the book that is most closely aligned with the instruments, Carla's, mental distortions, way she understands things, which are as close as possible to the law of one, that being the Bible. So basically what Ra is saying is that from how Carla understands reality, put the thing that she understands that comes the closest to what we're trying to say. So, basically from all the things that Carla understands, this is the closest thing. And again, I want to say again, remember, I'm an ex-Christian. I'm not trying to push Christianity at all. I think Christianity is extremely harmful. So saying that, Christianity or saying that the Bible allies with the law of one, it's basically saying that from what Carla knows, it's the closest thing. And remember, this is very, 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 very likely a Gnostic interpretation of Christ's teachings. It's not about having faith in Jesus because you're going to go to heaven and go to hell if you don't, because law of one has nothing about that BS. It's about understanding that we're unity and we're all divine, which is what the Gnostic interpretation of Christ is. So it's most likely about that. But that's besides the point. I'm trying to show why this stuff is used. It's not because it's magical or anything, but because it's going to put the instrument, Carla, in the right state of mind. So to the other side of the Bible, place a small amount of incense. To the rear of the book, symbolizing one, opened to the Gospel of John, chapter 1, place a white candle. So you have, a candle and symbolizing one and all that. So you see, this is all like symbolic to get you in the right state of mind. It's not about like some weird magical kind of thing. So here we have, I believe this is Jim McCarty getting Carla ready. Then we have Jim placing the microphones in front of Carla. And this is Dawn, I believe. Making sure that her head is pointing in the right direction. I believe what is going on here. And then you have the microphones. And you see below this, you have Ra's instructions. The instrument would be strengthened by the wearing of a white robe. The instrument shall be covered and prone, the eyes covered. And again, I really want to emphasize, like, what does wearing a white robe have to do it? Well, think about it. It's just putting one, if you take this stuff seriously, you're doing rituals, you're going into a trance, putting on a white robe is like symbolic for clarity, symbolic for clarity, for a divine occurrence, etc., quote unquote divine. And the reason why I emphasize this so much is I think that a lot of people who aren't used to thinking archetypally and symbolically can be turned off by this because people go, well, that's weird, superstitious bullshit. It's not about superstition. It's not thinking like, oh, if I wear white, it means that such and such is going to happen. It's about the state of mind. It's about the state of mind that it puts one in. Then you have Dawn sitting in the chair. Nice, very comfortable looking chair. I wish I had a chair like that. My chair is not that comfortable. With the Dawn looking very mysterious, by the way, I must say. With the questions, I believe. So Dawn is in the background there, questioning. Man, I wish they got video of this. That would be great. And then this is Jim McCarty in the back, overlooking everything, sending positive vibes. Another shot of Carla here. And then this is the session when the session is over, returning to her state as well. Then we have Jim. We have the place where it all took place, which looks very, very nice and pretty. And then look, it's a kitty cat. We call it named Gandalf. Kitty cat named Gandalf. Cute. Dawn in the office with Gandalf. Or no, that's a different one. Is it? No, I think it's Gandalf.
And is that another kitty in the corner? I don't know. Or is that just something fluffy? I don't know what it is. Oh yeah, attracting a feline audience. And then Jim and Carla. I think Jim and Carla ended up getting married. I think. And then Carla, pretty picture of Carla. And now there's more. Like, we skipped a lot, but I didn't want to spend too much time in the introduction because we want to get into the material itself, and we are going to be reading the next one as First Contact with Ra's First Contact, and it's going to be really good, like I said. First of all, I highly recommend watching the video that I did, which is a summary of all this stuff. But now that we have an understanding, and see, the reason why I wanted to talk about this stuff with you is because it's important to know, like, what's going on here. What's going on here is pretty advanced, which requires an understanding, like I said, of psychology, understanding how ritual works, etc. Now, are you beginning to see a little bit kind of like how concept networking works, how you're understanding how, the occult and religion and aliens and physics and psychology, etc., all starts to fit together to form a coherent picture? Like, occult rituals aren't about magically summoning beings. It's about psychologically putting one in the right mindset to be able to clear one's mind for whatever it is that they're about to do. Now, again, but so many people misunderstand this. So yeah, like probably 9 people out of 10 think that magic is about summoning entities or whatever, or that occult stuff is about summoning entities or whatnot. But of course it's not. I mean, look, you've had some of the smartest people in history be involved with some of this stuff. It's not silly like how you see it portrayed on TV, or like Harry Potter or any of that crap. Or even how most people who get into magic and the occult and stuff have no idea what it's actually about. And so it gets a really bad rep. But anyway, bad rap. You can see how concept networking comes into play here. Very interesting stuff. So next time we are going to take a look at First Contact. It's going to be good. I am so excited to explore all this with you. And again, remember, as always, the 3 possibilities: could be real, could be made up, could be coming from Carla's unconscious. And I'm not claiming any of these as being for sure. We don't know, but it's very interesting to take a look at the information itself. Now, one has to be careful with this information because, remember, this is also, I feel like the Law of One is a great exercise in a lot of different things. It's a great exercise in concept networking. It's a great exercise in using reason, because you want to examine this stuff rationally and critically. A lot of people automatically might be like, this is coming from an alien god. We have to believe every single thing it says. Every single thing must be true. Well, that's not the case. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if it's real or not real. Or it doesn't matter. We have to examine it critically and logically. Even if it's real, Ra can be wrong about things. Ra is not perfect. Ra can have certain agendas that we don't know about. Ra can have certain ideas that are not universally aligned. Even though it may think that they are, we have to be constantly questioning, examining with reason. And like I said, there's things in here I definitely don't agree with, and some weird stuff in here. But there's some really good things as well. So it's kind of like, again, thinking about, the idea of, did Jesus exist? It doesn't matter if Jesus existed. It's about examining it logically and critically, and seeing what's being said, and seeing if some of that, if there's a line in there that's bullshit, throw it out. If there's something in there that's good, like treat others how you'd want to be treated, that's great. It's about using logic and reason to examine these things critically. So Law of One's a great exercise in all this. I just always approach it carefully because a lot of danger as well from people just being like, oh, well, we have to believe this now. It must be true. Or falling into weird patterns of thinking or whatnot. But we'll explore all that. We'll go into it. There's just so much to unpack here. And I think that's the thing that I really like about the Law of One, is that this is what I like about it. There's so much opportunity to talk about all the aspects of reality that are likely true. So we can talk about concept networking, metacognition. We can talk about the absolute. We can talk about zetas. We can talk about network minds. We can talk about evolving consciousness. We can talk about building a new earth. We can talk about occult rituals. We can talk about esoterica. We can talk about hidden knowledge, all within this very, very interesting context. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey. We have so much more to go. Watch my intro on this and watch the next week's video as we're going to continue this. As always, if you enjoy my work, consider supporting on Patreon. It is the best way to support my work, and you get access to weekly secret videos, members-only videos, and access to all those members-only videos. You can also get access to those by joining on Tier 2 or higher on YouTube. The join button is right below this video. And remember, I never want you to feel obligated or pressured to support monetarily. You don't have to. But if you feel good about it and are able, it helps out a lot, and I appreciate it very much. Big shout out to everyone who does support. Appreciate it, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Fairies of Venus, DB, William, Enki, Nocelina, Jose, and everyone else. Thank you very much.